By 1944, snipers across Europe were being watched as closely by their own officers as by the enemy, not because they lacked skill, but because of what they carried, what they altered, and what they were willing to do when no one was supposed to be looking. Military doctrine demanded discipline, issued equipment only, standard procedures, clear lines between soldier and outlaw, but the front lines never cared about clean rules. A sniper didn't survive by being predictable. He survived by becoming invisible, by bending regulations until they snapped, and by using tricks command would never officially approve, because approving them meant admitting what war had become. Some of these methods were quietly tolerated. Others could cost you pay, your rifle, even a court-martial. And if the wrong enemy patrol found proof in your kit, the consequences could be worse than punishment. Stay with me, because the final tricks weren't just against orders. They could get you executed if captured. Number 10. Unauthorized camouflage. Armies issued uniforms for recognition, discipline, and order. Snipers didn't care about order. They cared about disappearing. Men darkened faces with soot, mud, even burned cork. They tore fabric into strips and tied it to helmets and sleeves. Some stitched extra netting onto gear, or layered local vegetation so thick it made them look less like soldiers and more like part of the ground itself. Regulations called it tampering. Snipers called it survival. Number 9. Scent and smoke discipline. Manuals focused on marksmanship, not smell. But in forests and ruined towns, a single cigarette, a warm ration tin, even the wrong wind could betray a hide. Snipers avoided cooking, buried waste, and rubbed mud into cloth to dull human scent. Some units punished it as superstition. Then men started dying. And once you've learned to hide your body, you start hiding the rifle. Because the next giveaway wasn't your face, it was the glass. Number 8. Non-regulation optics and captured scopes. On paper, a sniper's rifle was standardized, approved scope, approved mount, approved zero. Reality was messier. Issued optics were scarce, fragile, and sometimes useless in the terrain soldiers actually fought in. A fogged lens in winter, a cracked tube after a fall, a mount that shifted under recoil, any one of those turned a sniper into a regular rifleman with a heavier weapon. So men improvised. Some scavenged enemy scopes from abandoned positions. Others traded for parts, borrowing mounts never meant for their rifle. A captured optic could be clearer, stronger, better suited to long fields or tight urban lanes. But carrying it was risky. Inspections didn't just look for dirt, they looked for anything unauthorized. A sniper caught with a non-issue scope could lose it on the spot, or be accused of relying on equipment outside the chain of command. But optics were only half the equation. The next trick wasn't about seeing better. It was about making the rifle behave differently when the moment came. Number 7. Trigger jobs and action tuning. Command wanted rifles to feel identical in every soldier's hands. Consistent, safe, predictable. That meant heavy triggers, rough actions, and mechanical tolerances designed for mass production, not precision killing. But snipers lived in the margins, where a fraction of a second mattered. A gritty trigger could pull a shot off target. A stiff bolt could cost the follow-up round. And in a hide, noise was as dangerous as recoil. So some men broke the one rule armorers feared most. They altered the heart of the weapon. They polished sear surfaces, lightened pull weight, smoothed bolt travel with improvised abrasives, even swapped springs to change the feel of the break. The goal was simple, a shot that released clean, with no fight from the rifle itself. The risk was brutal, too light, and the weapon could fire when it wasn't meant to. Too much filing, and the sear could slip. A sniper could end up dead from his own improvement, or punished for vandalizing government property. And once soldiers started changing triggers, some went further, changing the very signature of the shot itself. Number 6. Flash, glint, and signature suppression. Armies wanted rifles kept clean, unwrapped, and ready for inspection. Snipers wanted them invisible, because in the seconds after a shot, the enemy didn't need to see the shooter, only the flash, the reflection, the sudden spark of metal that screamed where death had come from. So men improvised. They taped cloth around barrels to break up shine. They wrapped scope tubes to kill glare. Some built crude scope hoods from leather, rubber, or cut metal. Anything that kept the sun from flashing off glass like a signal mirror. At night, others tried to reduce muzzle flash with makeshift covers and improvised hiders. Solutions never approved because they risked overheating, shifting accuracy, or worse. Command called it tampering. Armorers called it dangerous. And sometimes they were right. A loose wrap could snag. A blocked muzzle could turn one shot into disaster. But snipers accepted that risk, because a single flash could erase weeks of patience. Still, the most dangerous trick wasn't hiding the muzzle flash. It was hiding the sound of movement itself. Because the next battle wasn't at 400 yards. It was getting into position without being heard. Number 5. Silent movement tricks. The manuals taught firing positions, range estimation, and wind calls. They didn't teach how to move like a shadow. Yet for a sniper, the shot was only half the job. The other half was reaching the hide without leaving a trail of noise behind you. So men broke small rules that mattered more than big ones. They wrapped boots in cloth to soften footfalls. They padded metal buckles so they wouldn't click in the dark. Some stripped gear down to the minimum, because every loose strap became a rattle. Every extra canteen became a bell. Wire obstacles were cut slowly, silently, with improvised tools or careful twisting, because one snap could bring an entire patrol down on your position. Crawling had its own discipline. Snipers learned to move inches at a time, waiting for wind gusts, artillery, or distant gunfire to mask the sound. They timed movement to chaos, because silence was never guaranteed. These tricks weren't glamorous. They weren't celebrated. But they kept men alive. And once a sniper learned how to move unseen, he learned something darker, how to lie to the enemy's eyes. Number 4. Deception tactics. Command praised courage, discipline, and direct engagement. Snipers survived by turning the battlefield into a puzzle the enemy could never solve. Because once a shot was fired, the hunt began, and the fastest way to die was to let the enemy hunt the truth. So men created lies. Helmets were mounted on sticks and raised slowly above rubble, hedgerows, or trench lips, baiting the enemy into firing first. Fake firing positions were staged with disturbed dirt, discarded brass, and footprints leading to nothing. Some snipers even lit small flashes away from their hide, using mirrors or improvised reflectors to pull return fire toward an empty spot. The enemy fired at ghosts while the real rifle stayed silent. Then came ghost shots, firing from one position, but leaving behind a false story. A sniper would shoot, relocate instantly, and make it look like he'd never been there. Patrols would sweep the wrong ground, convinced they were closing in, while the shooter was already watching from somewhere else. Stay with me, because the next tricks weren't just deception. They were psychological warfare. They didn't just hide a sniper. They broke the enemy's confidence in what was real. And in that war of nerves, some methods crossed a line armies never wanted written down. Number 3. Forbidden ammunition and bullet modifications. Armies issued rounds by the crate, built for reliability, not perfection. But a sniper didn't need enough. He needed the one round that landed exactly where his sights promised it would. So some men stopped trusting standard issue and started building their own advantage. The simplest trick was sorting, rejecting inconsistent cartridges, separating rounds by lot, weight, and feel, hoarding the best for the shots that mattered. Others went further. Some scavenged captured ammunition, believed to fly flatter or hit harder. Some experimented with filing tips, altering profiles, or swapping rounds between magazines to control what came next. In desperate cases, soldiers tried improvised loads, chasing consistency the supply chain couldn't guarantee. Command hated it because it shattered standardization. Armorers feared it because it invited disaster. A modified bullet could tumble. A bad load could spike pressure. And if a man was caught with altered ammunition, it wasn't treated like curiosity. it was treated like intent. But the most feared sniper wasn't the one with the best ammo. It was the one who couldn't be found after firing. Because the next trick wasn't about the bullet. It was about what you became when you carried the wrong kind of identity into enemy territory. Number 2. Unauthorized sniper team tactics. Official doctrine liked clean roles, rifleman, scout, observer. But snipers didn't operate cleanly. They operated in pairs, in shadows, and often beyond what commanders could supervise. Spotters became more than assistants. They carried extra ammunition, watched flanks, timed patrol routes, and signaled danger with gestures so small they looked like nothing. Some teams used improvised range cards, coded hand signs, even silent tapping systems, methods never taught in basic training because they belonged to a different kind of war. Then there was movement. Snipers learned that the rifle itself could betray them, so they hid it. Some broke weapons down and carried parts separately. Others wrapped barrels, disguised slings, or moved through ruins and hedgerows like civilians trying not to be noticed. And in certain operations, clothing crossed into dangerous territory. Camouflage so irregular, it blurred the line between soldier and partisan. That line mattered. Because capture wasn't just capture. A sniper caught with hidden gear, disguised movement tools, or irregular concealment could be treated as something worse than infantry. And then there was the trick armies feared most, because it didn't just break rules, it broke control. Number 1. Untraceable firing doctrine. This was the trick commanders feared because it couldn't be inspected, inventoried, or controlled. It wasn't a piece of gear. It was a mindset, one that turned a sniper into something the enemy could not hunt. Infantry doctrine assumed the shooter would fire, reveal himself, and be answered with force. But snipers who mastered this method refused to play that game. They delayed shots for hours, letting patrols pass, waiting for the one target that mattered. They fired from angles no one expected, through broken walls, from low ground, from positions that made return fire useless. And the moment the trigger broke, they didn't admire the hit. They vanished. Not meters. Hundreds of meters. Some teams moved before the enemy even reacted, because they knew the counter-sniper search patterns better than the counter-snipers did. To command, it looked like cowardice. To the enemy, it felt like the battlefield itself was shooting. And if the wrong patrol caught proof of that discipline, maps, irregular camouflage, hidden weapons, the sniper might not be treated as a normal prisoner at all. These tricks were banned because armies wanted control. But war rewards outcomes, not permission. Soldiers were issued doctrine written by committees, then sent into chaos where survival demanded something else. Some paid for these tricks with punishment. Some paid with death. Others lived because they broke the rules first. If you want World War II history without mythology, subscribe. There's more coming.